homeless. He knows where everybody is. He looks out for them. If somebody's missing, he knows how to put the word around, find people. And tied into that, Saints are very much involved with the food banks in St Helens. So there'll be food bank collections at matches, and then that can be handed out in a number of situations. So, I mean, they're probably just 4 examples, and I'm sure the other foundations do an awful lot. It's just rugby league is so much part of the community.
Yeah.
And the foundations are just able to just really put so much back. And often, I'm sure Wigan, Warrington witness the same as St Helens. The rugby club is almost the standard bearer for, a pretty depressed town at times. And so anything that's got the club's brand on it gets a bit of credence and people want to be involved. So yeah. I am now an advocate of foundations.
I completely echo what you're saying there. Actually, I've done some volunteer work with Wigan, setting up fan events and also being involved in the fan engagement board and things like that with Wigan. And similar experience to finding out what the community foundation do behind the scenes, more than just going into schools and those sorts of things. The rugby league memories sessions, and they've received funding to kind of extend what we do with that council funding at Wigan. That's going to be a development over, well, who knows when now, but over the next year or so within the Robin Park facility that we have. And similar to you, like getting people from the community into there. I had a conversation with Chris Vadlinski, and he was saying that he sees Robin Park not just as a premier training facility for our club to use, and with the world-class gym facilities and things like that, and indoor running track and stuff, but he explained the club don't want to do anything to push people like the Wigan Harriers out of it, or the schools that come and use it for sports days or things like that, because they want it to be seen as a place for everyone in Wigan to be inspired to become athletes at whatever they can be good at, but in Wigan, and represent Wigan, and just like you're saying with St Helens and those sorts of things. And I know people who work hard at the Leeds Foundation, and they have like touch rugby sessions for people who are basically well out of shape, but want to just be involved and engaged, and get people down to do stuff like that at their training facilities at an evening and stuff. And obviously we've seen the expansion of the women's game, which is essentially an amateur game, that a lot of their logistical support comes through the community foundations as well at different clubs. And I think it's fantastic what the foundation's doing. Like I say, it really does reach right into the sports community and reinforces those links that make our clubs so important in these northern towns that aren't necessarily affluent and successful these days, unfortunately.
You've just reminded me to mention one other project which a lot of the clubs run, Back On Side, which is exactly as you describe it. It's for should we say, older, less fit people who need to get back into exercise. And some of that online as well. I know Saints have put some fitness exercises on, but when we get back to normal again, at Saints, Joe Batchelor, one of the first teamers, along with Chris Chamberlain from the foundation, they run a Back On the Side programme every Wednesday night after the offload session. And again, that's the other side of both mental fitness and physical fitness.
Which do work together, obviously, don't they? And the foundation clearly... Joe Batchelor, similar to Louis McCarthy Scarsbrook, has really disappointed me in 2020 because we spoke to Louis McCarthy Scarsbrook and actually realised that it's not that bad. And Joe Batchelor was on one of the BBC podcasts, and I thought, what an outstanding young gentleman he sounds like. That really made me torn, but that's what rugby league people are like. And you can hate them from the terraces, but when you actually get to know most of these people, they're very good people who care a lot. You got Stevie Ward doing what he does at Leeds, and you've got examples across all of the different clubs with what people do in their communities and with their fan bases and those sorts of things. It's frustrating when you want to hate them. It really is.
Don't forget though, Mark, we've done you a favour. Mr. Holbrook's now left, so you don't have to like our coach as well. And it was getting very worrying. Even Wigan as well, Mr. Holbrook.
I just need James Roby to retire, don't I, really? And then I can go back to the good old days of hating St Helens. No, but let's talk a little bit more about the rugby side of it and our support, because I wouldn't do this podcast, you wouldn't do your charity, your volunteer work at the foundation or what have you, if it wasn't for our love for the sport. So this week's show, we're going to be talking about our favourite halfbacks. St Helens has had some fantastic halfbacks, be it wearing a 6 or a 7 during the Super League era in particular. Is there any favourites that stand out for you? You know, you can go back into before Super League as well if there's anyone, but you didn't win as much then.
And I'm very kind to when you were talking about the training facilities at Robin Park, not to say all these activities are much better if you own your own ground. So, but we won't go with that.
We're not burdened with the cost of having to run that ground in this uncertain times, though. I did point that out the other week, Mike.
Right, we'll move on. We'll move on. I do go back a little bit further than you. In fact, quite a bit further than you. One of my first favourite halfbacks was a guy called Peter Glynn, who was actually known as Super Sub in St Helens. And he was a guy who came on when we did win something, but it was back in 1976, the Dad's Army final with Widnes. And he came on, scored a couple of tries. So starting off with him, but then you're quite right. We are really blessed with who we've had at Saints. I mean, off the top of my head, Bobby Goulding, Sean Long. If I was to pick somebody non-Saints, though, just to add into it, of course, Lee Breers, who started his career at Saints and actually got us to Wembley in 1997 after Bobby had accidentally bumped into, was it Neil Cowie he bumped into it?
Before that time, but he did get a suspension, didn't he? That gave Breers his opportunity. I think, 14, 15-year-old Lee Breers by the looks of his face at that time. Certainly not the man with the big beard that he is now. Yeah.
But I'm down to two in my sort of all-time favourites. Between Johnny Lomax and really the thing about Johnny that is I hold in awe of him is the adversity he's been through. I think people know a lot about the knee injuries that he's come back from, and I think at times we Saints fans thought he'd never play again. But equally the head injury, which is why he was the head guard, a really serious brain injury when he was young, and to be playing top class rugby league and getting clattered around the head so often and playing at the level he does. I mean, Johnny, I think, is an example to anybody. But I am going to go with a different favourite. My favourite halfback is, we know him in St Helens as Tommy God, and it's got to be Tommy Martin.
Tommy Martin was just so skillful, wasn't he? Like, he was one of those halves that probably wouldn't quite be as successful now because maybe you need to defend a bit more now, and it's not as much about the flashier sort of. But he had such a great range of skill, Tommy Martin. I just remember him being so skillful.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things I always remember: 2 tries at Wembley against Bradford. But I've got to mention, particularly talking to you, Mark, of course, that hat trick when we were behind at Wigan, and of course he came through, scored a hat trick, and I think we won it with the last kick of the game.
That one must. I can't remember that one.
2002, I think, Mark. But I mean, everybody from Wigan claimed he dropped the ball when it was knocked out of his hand. Does that?
I don't remember it. I don't remember it. I only remember really vividly 1 or 2 derbies in there. In that era. I'm not sure why. No, yeah, he was a fantastic player. And Lomax as well, good to mention him, because I think everyone loves Johnny Lomax. We talk on the Super League pod about just how good he is at Super League and how we're desperate for him to replicate that at the next level up, to prove that he is a world-class player, because we all think he has got it in him, hasn't he, as a world-class player.
Well, I mean, I probably never thought I would say this, but I'm hoping that Shane Wayne can actually sort this out, because the issue for Johnny at international level is that master of positional play, our ex-coach, doesn't know whether he's a fullback or a standoff. And the example I would give, the second half against New Zealand, him and Tommy Makinson and Connor tore New Zealand apart. But at that point, he was actually coming in and doing what he does at St Helens. I think he's been wasted at fullback at England level.
Yeah, I mean, that game he played fullback, but I think he was he's a run threat as well as a ball carrying threat, isn't he? And in that side, that on that particular day, you had him and Williams both coming down the same side of the pitch a lot of the time, and that's just hard to defend because you've got two players there with run pass kick options. So what do you do?
And I think both of them can delay a pass.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like one of the favourite bits about Johnny, when he will hold the ball when you think he's going to pass it, and then just flick it out when you think he's not going to bother.
It's definitely Taylor's favourite thing about Johnny Lomax, isn't it? He's probably earned him a contract this year, didn't he, with all them short drop-off balls, perfectly timed into gaping holes. You wanted to have a chat as well, because this week, as this episode goes out, we would have been building up to Good Friday. Since the Super League and the summer, the move to summer, it is the biggest date in the calendar aside from the finals for Wigan and St Helens fans. So you wanted to talk about maybe your favourite Good Friday games. Now I'll set you up here that I didn't go to any Good Friday games until I think 2001 might have been my first ever Good Friday derby. So I won't be able to say, how lucky you were to have won any of the ones that you won before that. I can only talk about how lucky you were to scrape away with results after that. But what are your favourites?
Well, I just picked up on something the discussion you're having with, is it Sarah from Hull last week?
Yes.
About how different a Saints Wigan derby appears to be to that Humberside derby.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, we both know the passion, we know the size of the crowds, but it appears to us to be just so good-natured. We hate losing, we love winning, but it's, we get on with it, we go home, and that's it. I was really surprised to hear that sort of contrast with the Hull one.
Yeah, no, and also because I genuinely know people who have met up after a Hull derby and become engaged and have children and things like that after being on different sides of the city. But obviously, but there is, there is a difference there, and I can only remember one Good Friday derby where there was a bit of animosity in the crowd, and it was one we lost at Knowsley Road on a rainy Good Friday in the mid-noughts. So it must have been, I'm going to guess 2006 maybe. And when we weren't so great, I think we lost it to 0 or something. And back then, obviously when it rained at Knowsley Road, any Saints fans who might want to congregate around the away end would have all been forced back into us underneath the stand as the Wigan fans. So there was a heated exchange during that game with a Saints fan. But do you know what? At the end of the game, me and the guy shook hands and wished each other well for the rest of the season. So it was a different vibe. There's a genuine dislike, but it doesn't carry over outside the 80 minutes, kind of like it is on the pitch almost. For me, anyway. For me personally.
No, I think you're right. I remember now, it was 19-0, and Tommy Martin again, he did the wonder pass while looking the other way.
I just remember being very annoyed for most of the game. But yeah, that's one of the things, actually. There's a theme to Good Friday derbies, and I don't know how this has happened, but in the noughties, it seemed to go that everything since we moved to the new stadium was played under glorious sunshine, and everything at your old ground, it was raining every Good Friday. And the last sunny Good Friday we had at home, I think, was probably 2011 when Liam Farrell scored that try. Then the next year you moved to your new ground. Everyone since then has chucked down with rain at Wigan, but been delightfully sunny at St Helens. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah. Anyway, so on Friday, because obviously, like you gutted, there's no game. I will be choosing a game to watch, and it's down to 2 now. First one will be too early for you. 1996, the first year of Super League, and